Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Front Page on AIM Network, India's definitive media organization and voice on everything AI and technology. And tonight is a very special episode because we have two luminaries shedding light and giving us some fabulous insights. So please stay tuned. But we kick off things with the headlines. OpenAI has launched the ChatGPT App Directory and opened app submissions to developers, turning ChatGPT into a full-fledged platform where third-party apps can be discovered, invoked, and used directly inside conversations, marking its shift from a chatbot to an AI operating system for work, commerce, and creation. If you were following Front Page closely, which we sure were, we saw this coming long ago. Tata Consultancy Services has disclosed a $1.5 billion annualized AI revenue run rate and completion of over 5,500 AI projects as it pivots to an AI-first services model with internal transformation, talent skilling, ecosystem partnerships, and data center investments to become the world's largest AI-led tech services firm. G42 has released Nanda 87B, an open-weight Hindi-English large language model trained on 65 plus billion Hindi tokens, signaling a major push towards sovereign population-scale AI for India and the global south. We, of course, have the CEO of G42 India, Manu Kumar Jain, joining us here on Front Page. Please make sure that you stay tuned. And finally, India's tech startups raised $10.5 billion in 2025, ranking third globally despite a funding slowdown with early-stage resilience, rising IPOs, and increased exits, pointing to a maturing startup ecosystem, according to Tracxn. And to decode this, we of course have the co-founder of Tracxn, Neha Singh, joining us. Good evening. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's take a deep breath, a moment of silence, if you will, because today officially marks the day where ChatGPT stops being a chatbot. Tonight, OpenAI quietly crossed one of the most important milestones in its history. ChatGPT is no longer just a tool you talk to. It's officially becoming a platform you build on. OpenAI has launched a ChatGPT App Directory, opened up app submissions for developers, and rolled out a new apps SDK, allowing third-party services to live inside ChatGPT and operate directly within conversations. No redirects, no switching tabs, no traditional app user interface, just intent, which translates to action. So if you're ready, let's break down what actually launched, why it matters, and why, if you've been watching Front Page, this was always inevitable. But before that, you pretty much know what to do, which is like, share, subscribe. This is Front Page by AIM Network. And let's begin. OpenAI has introduced three big changes. The first one, a ChatGPT App Directory users can now browse, search, and discover apps inside ChatGPT from the Tools menu or directly via chatgpt.com/apps. Number two, open app submissions for developers. Any developer can now submit a ChatGPT app for review and publication. At number three is a new apps SDK, which is beta. This lets developers build chat-native apps, not wrappers, not plugins, but experiences designed specifically for conversation. So in simple terms, ChatGPT is becoming an app distribution layer. This is a platform shift. Earlier, connectors help ChatGPT pull data from services like Google Drive or Dropbox. Now, OpenAI is calling all of them apps. Chat connectors, which means apps with file search, deep research connectors, which means apps with deep research, synced connectors, which means apps with sync. That rebrand definitely matters because apps can now trigger during conversations, be at, for example, mention by name, take real actions, use memory if enabled, and in some cases, even complete workflows end to end. We've said this before. on front page. This is ChatGPT becoming the interface layer for software. And if this feels familiar, it definitely should. Because on front page, we've already shown you what this future looks like. We covered, if you remember, Zomato ordering directly from ChatGPT and Claude UPI payments via Razorpay inside ChatGPT. Apple Music integrating into ChatGPT. Big Basket, Airtable, Salesforce, Replete, Lovable, moving toward agent-first access. Each time, the signal was the same. Apps are no longer fighting for screen space. They're actually fighting for agent access. And tonight, OpenAI just formalized that particular shift. Apps inside ChatGPT can now do this: order groceries, build slide decks, create full stack apps, search apartments, manage workflows, trigger payments, sync data, generate prototypes, complete tasks without leaving the chat. So examples already announced are Replete, build and deploy code inside ChatGPT. Lovable, turn conversations into full stack apps. Clay, turn conversations into live sales intelligence console, specifically for enrichment, research, and outbound. Now we talk about Apple Music. Create playlists via natural language. Zomato, order food via MCP. The enterprise tools, which is Salesforce, Airtable, Adobe for developers. This is the real unlock. So instead of building an app fighting for distribution, paying for ads, optimizing app store rankings, you can now ship directly into ChatGPT, reach millions instantly, let intent drive discovery, build once, deploy conversionally. OpenAI is well effectively saying this: build for conversation, not clicks. That's a massive shift in software economics. Right now, developers can link out to their own sites for transactions. Physical goods are supported. Digital monetization is coming later. This mirrors early Apple App Store days. First is distribution, then is behavior, then is monetization. OpenAI is playing the long game. OpenAI has been explicit on one thing, which is users stay in control. Apps must declare what data they access. Privacy policies are mandatory. Apps can be disconnected instantly. Data sharing is transparent. Training usage depends on user settings. This matters. Why? Because trust will decide which platforms survive this shift. And this is about where software lives. So for decades, desktop meant mouse, then mobile meant touch web, browser. Now AI means conversation, and ChatGPT is positioning itself as a discovery engine, a command surface, a coordination layer, a transaction interface, not replacing apps. So sitting above them is basically what ChatGPT is doing. And in conclusion, here is the front page take. So if images made ChatGPT creative, if memory made it personal, if payments made it transactional, apps make it an operating layer. The ChatGPT App Store is the moment OpenAI stops being just a chatbot and starts behaving like an AI native platform. And if history is any guide, once users get used to asking instead of clicking, they won't go back. We told you this shift was coming, and tonight it has arrived. Please do let us know what you think in the comments below. This is Front Page by AIM Network. You know what to do. Like, share, subscribe, and always remember, think AI, think AIM. Tonight on Front Page, India's largest IT services company just made its clearest AI statement yet. For the first time ever, Tata Consultancy Services has broken out its AI numbers. And the headline is hard to ignore. TCS has crossed $1.5 billion in annual AI revenue and has completed over 5,500 AI projects globally. This wasn't buried in an earnings footnote. It was actually announced deliberately at TCS Analyst Day 2025. And that tells you something, which is TCS CEO K. Krithivasan didn't position AI as an add-on. He positioned it as the company's next identity. More than 54 of TCS top 60 clients are already working with the firm on AI. 85% of clients with contracts above $20 million now use TCS for AI-led work. And AI revenues alone are growing 16.3% quarter on quarter, far faster than TCS's core business. This is the first time an Indian IT major has publicly said AI is no longer experimental. AI is now a core revenue engine. But one sentence stood out. Kriti Vasan said TCS is adopting an AI-first culture, where the first question is, what can AI do here, even if it cannibalizes our revenue? End quote. That's not a throwaway line. For decades, IT services grew by billing more humans, more hours, more effort. Now TCS is openly saying it is willing to automate parts of its own billable work to stay ahead. That's very rare and well, to be honest, slightly uncomfortable as well, especially for investors. But it's also very honest. Kriti Vasan went further. He said AI is not just another technology cycle. He called it a civilizational shift. In TCS's framing, which means digital enterprises were data-aware, AI enterprises are now context-aware. Software moves from reporting to reasoning, from automation to autonomy, and AI becomes a decision coach, not just a tool. This is TCS selling a future where software doesn't just run workflows, it recommends choices and takes supervised actions. That's a very different services pitch, to be honest. And here's where it gets interesting. TCS isn't just selling AI to clients, it is also aggressively deploying AI internally, and that too at scale. 600,000 employees now have access to AI tools, models, and coding assistants. TCS ran what it calls the world's largest AI hackathon. 280,000 employees. Wow. Over 500,000 submissions. And instead of humans reviewing them, TCS used AI to evaluate the entries. A process leadership says would have taken actually about 90 people over 12 months, but actually was done in just 3 weeks. This is TCS quietly showing clients that we are not just talking about scale, we are operating at it. TCS has also introduced a 5-level services autonomy framework inspired by self-driving cars. So let's just think of it like this. Level 1 and 2, AI assists human level. Number 3 is agents understand context and take supervised actions. At level 5, we have full autonomy, still theoretical. Most enterprise deployments today sit around level 2 or early level 3. And TCS is now pitching autonomy upgrades as a structured, repeatable service. That's clearly an attempt to productize AI transformation, not just customize it. There's another signal which many missed, which is this. TCS leadership openly admitted, we cannot build everything ourselves. That's why the company is accelerating. Partnerships, acquisitions, and ecosystem-led growth, which explains the recent Salesforce consulting acquisitions, deep partnerships with Microsoft, OpenAI, Anthropic, NVIDIA, Google, and of course, an early work on agent-to-agent protocols. This is TCS acknowledging that AI cycles move too fast for purely organic build-outs. And then, of course, came the most debated move. TCS is investing billions into AI data center infrastructure via its Hypervault venture alongside TPG. This challenges TCS's traditional asset-light services DNA. Analysts questioned it directly. Management's response? Here it is. AI infrastructure deepens hyperscaler relationships and positions TCS as a one-stop AI transformation partner. So it's a risk, but it's a calculated one. We, of course, have covered this extensively here on Front Page. If you haven't already seen it, please make sure to check it out. Analysts, of course, raise the obvious concern. If AI automates legacy services faster than new age revenue grows, how does TCS expand overall? Leadership didn't dodge it. They actually answered it in a sense. This is what it is. AI will redefine value, not just replace revenue lines. Whether that holds, the next 24 months will decide. And as always, as is the ritual, here is the front page take. This is what we feel. This is not a quarterly headline. This is India's largest IT services firm publicly committing to an AI-led future, even if it disrupts its own business model along the way. $1.5 billion in AI revenue is the milestone. But the biggest story is this. TCS is betting that scale plus trust plus execution discipline will matter more than flashy models in the AI services era. The question now isn't whether TCS is serious about AI. It's whether the rest of Indian IT can move fast enough to keep up. Accenture previously reported roughly $2.7 billion in advanced AI revenue and $5.9 billion in AI related bookings last fiscal year, highlighting the scale of global peers' AI business. We, of course, would request you to stay tuned because Accenture earnings call is just around the corner. And we are certain that this number is going to change, and that too significantly. And of course, to set the context of Indian IT companies back home, Indian IT peers like Infosys, Wipro, and HCL Tech haven't yet publicly broken out AI revenues to this level, though they are actively embedding generative AI, cloud, and agentic solutions across services. Please do let us know what you think in the comments below. This is Front Page by AIM Network. You know what to do. Yes, like, share, subscribe, and always remember, think AI, think AIM. So just days ago, G42 announced Nanda 87B, one of the largest open-weight Hindi English language models ever released, trained on 65 plus billion Hindi tokens, built in collaboration with MBZ UAI, Inception, and Cerebras, and of course designed for real-world use across formal Hindi, English, and everyday speech. And joining us today, yes, it's a true honor to have with us Manu Kumar Jain, who is the CEO of G42 India, one of the most influential operators at the intersection of AI, compute, data centers, and national-scale digital infrastructure. G42 is the Middle East's largest deep tech and AI group, and under Manu's leadership in India, the company is driving investments across AI models, GPU cloud, data centers, and sovereign AI infrastructure to power India's next phase of growth. Manu is no stranger, trust me, to scaling at population scale. He built Xiaomi India from zero to a $10 billion business, made it India's #1 smartphone and smart TV brand, co-founded Jabong, which was later acquired by Flipkart/Walmart, and advised global enterprises at McKinsey and Company. Today, he joins us to break down why India is becoming a primary theater in the global AI race, what Nanda 87B signals for Indic AI, and how G42 sees India evolving from an AI market into an AI infrastructure for the world. A big hello and welcome to Front Page. Manu, how are you doing? Great to have you with us.
Thank you so much. It is wonderful to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
And of course, the accolades just carry on, Manu. Some fabulous feathers in your cap.
Thank you so much. Very kind of you to say this.
Yep. So let's just dive right into it, Manu. I wanted to start from this particular point. We know for years that frontier AI has actually been dominated by English first closed models, trained and controlled elsewhere. But now we're seeing a very different signal. An 87 billion parameter Hindi English model, open weight, culturally aligned, and trained at scale, which has been released with India in mind. So the big announcement, which was G42, has just released Nanda 87B, an 87 billion parameter open Hindi English model, as I just mentioned. So in simple terms, why is this a big deal for India's AI ecosystem right now? That would be a great place for us to kick off this conversation.
Sure. First of all, thank you so much once again, thank you so much for having me here. You spoke about how the entire internet as well as the whole AI world has been dominated by models which have been trained in a different part of the world, in the Western world,
Hmm.
and how it's a big deal for somebody to launch an 87 billion parameter model, which has been trained on Indic languages, especially Hindi and English. We believe it's a really big and an important step um, in advancing the entire AI ecosystem in India and in global South. This is a world-class model. As you said, it is an open source model
Hmm.
and it's a bilingual model. Using this model, various enterprise applications can be built in Hindi, English, and English, the way we speak, half Hindi, half English.
Right. Hmm.
It is open sourced, which means it can accelerate local innovation. It can help Indian startups, research institutes, IITs, and various other government bodies in building local AI applications which are suited for the
Hmm.
country.
Hmm.
And it is a model, as you said, not just linguistically but also culturally, which has been trained on Indian nuances, because
Hmm.
our culture, our language is so much different from the Western world. So
Sure.
it really adapts to the local needs and hence can truly serve the needs of 1.4 billion or close to a billion Hindi speaking people in the country.
That's a wonderful aspiration, to be honest, Manu. But that brings me to this thought. Why Hindi? Why now? Nanda is trained on over 65 billion Hindi tokens and tuned
True.
for English and real world speech. So, according to you, what gap did you see in existing global models that made this step necessary?
Oh, sure. So you're right. It has been trained using billions and billions of Hindi data sets.
Hmm.
And not just Hindi, but we have tried to keep it more colloquial speaking Hindi, which is the English. Uh, I think there are two big gaps that we see. When you look at the global models, which have been primarily trained on English language,
Hmm.
first, they do not understand the local cultural nuances.
Hmm.
They could be saying things like that we say on a daily basis, which may not be really translated from English or to English.
Sure.
One of my favorite example is things like saying "teri nani yaad aa jayegi" or
Correct.
things like this, which basically means very different in Hindi versus very different in English. Now, if you just translate it into English, it basically means you will remember your grandmother. But culturally, what it means is that I will make your life so miserable that you will regret it. So you should not mess up with me. So things
Grandmothers
like
are
those.
always nice, to be honest.
Yes, that is true. So I think that is the first one, that it basically really takes care of all these nuances. Second part is the whole English part, like the way that we speak on a daily basis.
Sure.
हम लोग गाड़ी को कार भी बोलते हैं, गाड़ी भी बोलते हैं, ट्रेन को हम
सही
लोग
बात.
ट्रेन ही बोलते हैं, हम में से कोई
Hmm.
भी लॉ पर काम ही नहीं बोलता. और फॉर एग्जाम्पल टैक्सी इज
रेलगाड़ी
टैक्सी,
बोलते हैं कई बारी.
रेलगाड़ी बोल देते हैं, ट्रू, राइट, बट अदरवाइज ट्रेन इज ऑल्सो इक्वली एक्सेप्टेबल.
हाँ.
और टैक्सी टैक्सी होता है. तो लॉट ऑफ दिस हिंदी इंग्लिश कॉम्बिनेशन, हाउ डज इट वर्क वेल? I think the focus has been on making this Hindi English work together so that it feels more real. How
Hmm.
we speak, we're not used to speaking the textbook Hindi or the textbook pure
Correct.
English. In fact, if we start speaking textbook Hindi the way our Hindi teachers would want us to, or what they taught us like years ago, probably half of us would not be able to even understand it fully. And that's
Absolutely.
why this piece around the whole Hindi English combination is a big piece, along with the whole cultural nuances that I spoke about.
Which is actually so true also and so relevant, to be honest, Manu, क्योंकि हमारी मानसिकता इस लौकिकता से समझ आती है. I tried.
True.
Anyway.
Yeah, that's a nice one.
At a time, so when many frontier models are going closed, G42 chose to release Nanda 87B as open weights. The point
True.
is, why does openness matter for India, Manu, and the global South?
I think that's a great question. Thank you so much for asking it. Um, we at G42, we believe that our mission is to empower or to accelerate the AI adoption in global South, including India. And in markets like India, we believe open weights matter a lot more.
Hmm.
I'll tell you why. So there are two or three different points. Point number one, if these are open source, models can be audited, they can
Yeah.
be localized,
Hmm.
they can be fine tuned, and they can be deployed on local infrastructure. Um, think of a situation where the government of India, if they want to use a model like this
Mhm.
for something like today, almost anything and everything that we use UPI, we use Aadhaar, etc. If
Yep.
somebody wants to build an application on top of it,
Mhm.
sovereignty is a big angle.
Yep.
So government or the entities, research institutes would want data not to go out of the country, and to be the whole model to be sitting within the physical and legal boundaries of the country. And
Mm.
an open source model allows that. It also help enables startups, research institutes,
Mm.
universities. We spoke
Mm.
about IITs,
Yep.
and actually innovating without worrying about licensing barriers, without having any dependence on foreign entities,
Mhm.
on ensuring that AI reflects really truly local, not just local knowledge and local nuances,
Mm.
but the
Mm.
whole data that they use for training it stays within the country. And
Mm.
all of that is possible with open source models. And that's why every model that we have been working on have been
Mhm.
open source.
Which is actually so encouraging to hear, Manu, for the fact that sovereignty is getting the kind of push and the kind of support that it genuinely needs. Nanda 87B is built on Llama 3.1 as its base.
Yes.
With
Yes.
multiple open weight models now, Manu, available globally, why did G42 choose Meta's Llama as the foundation? And what made it more suitable than other open models for building a Hindi English population scale system like Nanda?
Yeah. So it is true. It is built on Llama 3.1 as the
Mm-hmm.
base. And, uh, we we believe it's a great model, Llama 3.1. It
Mm-hmm.
offers a strong combination of scale readiness, the whole architectural stability,
Mm-hmm.
and it has the whole maturity of an open weight and open source model. It has proven great performance across multilingual scenarios. And when you fine tune it on Hindi specific weights or on Hindi data sets, the efficiency, at least in our, whenever we measure it, we find the efficiency to be really good.
Mm-hmm.
The whole Llama's strong backbone is English, and we have basically extended it and made it more suitable, more ideal for Hindi-speaking world or for
Mm-hmm.
India as a country by adapting it or by fine-tuning it on the Hindi and English data sets, and thus allowing the whole innovation on the linguistic angle, on the local cultural
Fair
angle.
enough.
That's what we have been.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Makes sense. Uh, as far as Nanda is designed for translation, summarization, instruction following, and transliteration, Manu, not just
True,
benchmarks.
true.
So the point is, how important is real world usability over, for that matter, leaderboard performance for a country like India?
Actually, I would say for a country like India, the real world usability is a lot more important
Hmm.
than any leaderboard performance. What would you do with leaderboard performance if it is not being used at a nationwide scale?
Agreed.
And look at a country like India, right? It is
Hmm.
extremely diverse,
Yeah.
where there's so many different languages, and within each of these languages, there's so many different dialects and accents. So much so, like I grew up in Meerut. If we go from Meerut to Delhi, to from Delhi to Jaipur, etc., at
Hmm.
every few tens or hundreds of kilometers, the dialect changes, the accent
Yes.
changes,
True.
and hence adapting an AI model or having an AI model which adapts to all these different scenarios
Hmm.
matters a lot more, far more than a leaderboard wins.
Yeah.
So we believe any of the AI models, especially the models like we are building and hopefully that others will build, will work across different languages, will work across
Hmm.
different accents. Um, and rather than just focusing on leaderboard wins. Another
Hmm.
issue that India faces is the whole bandwidth limitation. So while in big cities we have great network, but if
Yeah.
you go to the Bharat, like the smaller towns
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
villages,
Hmm.
network bandwidth could be an issue.
Yeah.
But while network is an issue, network bandwidth could be an issue. But even the entire government services, we spoke about Aadhaar and UPI and
Yeah.
many other in education, in healthcare, they still work on internet. Everything is digitized.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
how do you build a model which works, which gives really great performance and not just the benchmark scores
Sure.
across all these dialects, across these accents, across different bandwidth limitations? That is, in my mind, a lot more important than any leaderboard performance.
No, and I fully agree there because I mean, what you just mentioned speaks volumes and echoes the entire thought of practicality, and which is finally what makes something a remarkable success or not. So,
True.
the release highlights cultural alignment and responsible outputs as core design goals. How do you ensure, Manu, large language models remain culturally aware at India's scale and diversity?
I think this is really important.
Hmm.
Um, if you look at the whole evolution of internet and then evolution of AI, this happened in the Western world,
Hmm.
and while they do a terrific job of English as a language and of cultural nuances which are present over there,
Hmm.
but they may or may not capture the cultural nuances that we have. uh, we have so many different religions, we have so many different belief systems, so many different gods, practices
Sure.
that may or may not be captured by a model which is basically trained on the Western data set.
Hmm.
Take an example. I'm just thinking of something that we do. For example, we bow in front of our elders, or we touch their feet when we meet them,
Sure.
right? And this is something that a Westerner might not really understand on why do we do it
True.
and what is the significance behind this.
Hmm.
But we would want, like, if tomorrow AI is basically building, is creating content, I would want my AI to understand the local nuances on why is it so important in a country like India, but may or may not be relevant in the Western world.
Sure.
And hence this whole cultural sensitivity becomes really important for any AI model.
How would you, if you could give me a very quick overview, because the point that I was trying to ask you was, Manu, exactly that. That how would you, for example, build that cultural nuance and keep improving it on a regular basis?
Uh, the most important way over there is to basically feed the model with the correct kind of data. I think the
Okay.
biggest problem that we face in building models like Nanda or any other model for Indic language is
Mm-hmm.
the lack of digitized data.
Mm.
Um, if you look at India's history, we have a very, very rich history for thousands of years, and we
Sure.
have so much information. But unfortunately, majority of the information which is available right now in the world, which is
Mm.
digitized, is in English language.
Yeah.
Majority of things which are there, which we know in Hindi or Sanskrit or Telugu or Marathi or Tamil or different languages,
Mm-hmm.
they are not digitized. So the for us to make it culturally relevant, nuance, what we need as a nation is to basically have maximum amount of digitized data that can be fed to the model.
Mm.
Think of model as a basically a child, right? And I think many people have spoken about this, that a child basically learns by observing,
Mm.
and if you feed child right kind of values, right kind of food, the child basically grows up to become a healthy, well cultured child. Similarly, very similar are AI models. So if you feed good amount of data, which is the food for the AI model, and culturally nuanced data, it will turn out to
Mm-hmm.
be a great model from a cultural sensitivity point of view. But if you basically feed only the garbage, which is like the whole,
So
uh,
it's garbage
like
in, garbage out then. Yeah.
yeah, garbage in, garbage out, right? Or like what is being written on social media, it may not understand cultural
Sure.
nuances. For you to build such good quality models, you need to have really good quality digitized data.
So, Manu, where do you see Nanda 87B being adopted first? Is it going to be with the enterprises or education, content creation, or for that matter, public digital systems? And I would love for you to tell us what's the reason.
Um, I hope all of them. I hope uh, enterprises,
And so do
education
we.
institutes, IITs, content creators, all of them benefit by using Nanda 87B. But if I have to choose few, my guess would be it would be either enterprises or research institutes such as IITs or ISC that would be the
Mm-hmm.
first adopters of this model.
Mm-hmm.
The reason I see this because if you look at a lot of enterprises today, every single company is looking to have an AI leg,
Mm-hmm.
an AI strategy.
Mm-hmm.
And many of them, when we go and meet, various enterprise clients or various companies, they are looking for something which is open sourced because they would not want to share their data
Sure.
um, on a closed model, especially if the model is not hosted in the country, because the data then flows out of the country.
Hmm.
So, for example, if you look at a bank or an insurance company
Hmm.
wanting to issue a new policy or like trying to connect with the consumers using English language,
Hmm.
they might want to use Nanda 87B. Or if IITs are wanting to build or research institutes are wanting to build something new using AI
Hmm.
models, they might be wanting to use Nanda 87B. So my guess is either it would be enterprises or research institutes. Over a period of time, it could be other digital systems, government bodies, or content creators, but these two would be probably the first two ones.
Fair point. All right, so that brings me to this thought, Manu, which is that with Nanda, JIS, and other regional models, G42 seems to be building language first AI for the global south. So, how do you see India's role evolving in the global AI order?
So, India has a few intrinsic advantages. One, of course, we have a very large population. We have a
Yeah,
fairly young population, which is
true.
internet savvy. We have a population that is willing to experiment.
Hmm.
So, India, of course, becomes a large market for AI companies, and we have seen this recently. Like for some of the US-based companies, they've announced that India has already become the largest or the second largest market when it comes to their AI platforms.
Sure.
We have also seen some recent big announcements coming in where large hyperscalers or AI companies have announced multiple like huge investments in the country,
Hmm.
multi-billion dollar investments in the country
True.
in building the AI infrastructure. So I think on the consumption side, India is beginning to become big when it comes to the AI ecosystem. But I hope and I believe that India will also make a switch from just being a consumer of AI to
Hmm.
a builder of AI, which basically means over a period of time we will see local applications coming in, build on some of these AI models, which are not only suitable for Indian ecosystem, Indian consumers, but could also be applications which can be world class. So right now, majority of the work which is happening in India is consumption of AI and then building of infrastructure. And in near future, I hope it will be a lot of uh, production of AI applications or building of AI applications which will come out of India. So there's a realistic chance that India will be one of the large AI hubs across the world.
You know, Manu, it's so genuinely encouraging and inspirational to hear it from somebody like you because you are obviously always rubbing shoulders and you're exposed to so much more world over. For you to end up saying that, I believe, yes. And my takeaway from that was something that you just mentioned, which is a young population which is willing to experiment, which is that, yes, times ahead are looking very, very exciting. Which brings me to
True.
this. Nanda was trained on Condor Galaxy with Cerebras, one of the world's most powerful AI compute platforms. So, how
Yeah.
critical is it in terms of the access to sovereign scale compute for countries like India, Manu?
It is very important.
Hmm.
By the way, we work with all large companies, chip manufacturing companies like Cerebras, Nvidia, AMD, Qualcomm, and many more, right? We have large clusters across the world. And with Cerebras specifically, since this has been built in partnership with Cerebras, we have built Condor Galaxy, which is one of the
Hmm.
world's largest AI compute platforms or AI supercomputers in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And on so maybe I'll just talk a little bit about Cerebras and then how important it is for the country like India to
Sure.
have sovereign scale compute. On Cerebras, we really value what they bring to the table because they build this wafer scale technology.
Yeah.
Unlike regular chips where chips are cut, the wafer is cut into smaller pieces, and they basically build this large wafer which tries to minimize the all the losses when the data is transmitted from one node to another. So, and that's what enables models like Nanda, Jez, and many other models to be like super efficient, super fast.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in today's world, the point that you asked, which is Should countries like India have sovereign scale
Yep.
compute platforms? 100% yes. So if you look at maybe like the way I would explain this is maybe 30, 40, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, the biggest infrastructure that people, the countries needed was things like highways, roads, rail network. And then when internet came in, then people, countries needed fiber connectivity. In the AI world, the most basic infrastructure that you need is the data centers
Yeah.
and the compute clusters within it.
Sure.
And having a high performing AI compute cluster
Mm.
for sovereign use within the country is something that we believe is extremely essential for countries like not just India, for all major countries across the world.
Yep. Mm.
So India should also, in my humble opinion, should focus on building not just ramping up the whole data center space, but also
Mm.
building large AI supercomputers across the country.
It was it's so fascinating that you just mentioned that, because we did have Andrew Feldman on Front Page, who's the founder of Cerebras, and he was talking about the fact that how speed, and he's so encouraged and excited to work with India, and they seem to be having a very large footprint in India as days will go along. So kudos
Oh wow!
on that
I did not
particular
know that.
aspect. Yes,
I did not know that you guys had spoken to Andrew. He's
yes,
a
yes.
terrific guy
He's a
and a great
wonderful human
friend.
being to speak with. Yes.
Yes, he is. He's
And of
amazing.
course, you know what? It was a nice little show and tell also that happened. He showed us the chip on the
Okay,
show.
yeah.
Yeah.
I
So
wish
it
I
was
was
nice.
carrying. I could have shown it to you also, but of course, Andrew will do a much better job than I would do.
Yeah. But it was encouraging, Manu, to be honest, what he talked about, at least as far as, the future looks like, and Cerebras's presence in India, and how he's willing to really work with the government in a very
Yeah.
close manner, which is nice. Magical times ahead. Of course, now we come to this, which is foreign for Indian startups and developers watching this launch. So, what does Nanda 87B unlock that wasn't possible before?
So Nanda 87B gives all the developers in the country
Mm-hmm.
a true foundation model that they can own, they can adapt, they can deploy, and they can really start building AI first applications on top of it. So they can build something. The biggest use cases would be anywhere where they're building an application, AI application, which requires Hindi, English, or English combination.
Mm-hmm.
That's where it would be most effective. Enterprises can build tools without relying on foreign APIs, as we discussed earlier. Because this is open source, it can help lower cost.
Mm-hmm.
It can help improve local relevance. And most importantly, I would say I'll go back to the point saying it can help startups and developers innovate at population scale. It can basically help tap into these hundreds of millions, close to a billion Hindi speaking population in the country.
Which is crucial. Finally,
Yeah,
I'd
I
like
would
to.
basically
Sorry,
say,
sorry, you were
sorry,
mentioning.
no, no, I
Go
would just
ahead, go
say
ahead.
maybe just thinking aloud that it's simply put like it would like it's an sort of like AI for India or an inclusive AI for India. So if you're building an application, AI application for the entire country or Hindi speaking belt, this would be a great platform for you to build on.
It is huge. I mean, what you just mentioned, Manu, it seems very like, nice, but trust me, it's huge as an achievement. And kudos to you and the team. Which, of course, I'd like to probably round off this wonderful conversation that we've had, the both of us. And thank you so much for your time. But I'll have to not let you go without you telling us, what are you looking ahead to as far as 2026 is concerned? What does success look like for G42 in India? And how do you want models like Nanda to quietly change how hundreds of millions of Indians interact with technology every day? I think you've given us a peek into it, but it would be nice if you could tell us.
So at G42, we believe that AI should be accessible to anyone and everyone. AI will probably change our lives more than what internet and mobile did over the last 2 decades.
Mm,
Uh, the rate of change is significantly higher with AI than what we saw with internet and then with mobile internet. And we genuinely hope that we can play a small role
nice.
in this seamless integration of AI into daily lives, into whether it is government services, whether it is education, whether it is healthcare, whether it is e-commerce, anything and everything, where people need to interact with consumers or with people in Hindi or English or local dialects. We hope we can play a small role over there. Um, the ultimate goal for us, whether it is building infrastructure like data centers, whether it is building large compute clusters like Gondo Galaxy, whether it is building Stargate project here in UAE. The ultimate goal is to ensure that we are able to bring AI in a very democratic way for anyone and everyone, especially in the global south, across billions of
Beautiful.
people, of course, in India.
You know what, Manu? I just want to say this, that it's truly been fascinating speaking with you.
Same.
You have achieved some great things in the past, and the fact that you are on this particular path it just gives us so much more confidence that I'm pretty sure you'll be able to do this and do it thumpingly well. This, of course,
Thank you
wishing
so much
you
for your kind words.
and your team all of the best, and I wish all your dreams and your vision for 2026 comes true. And it'll be great for you, of course, but it'll be brilliant for the rest of the population as well.
Thank you so much.
Fabulous. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was Manu. And of course, as he has put it across, there is a Herculean, brilliant task that they are executing with that 87 billion parameter language model. The nuance of our country, the cultural aspects, the language, and everything else seems to be seamless. And he is working non-stop to make sure that it is helping startups, it's helping builders, it is open source. And of course, I would like to say this in the most pleasant of ways, quoting Bob Dylan, the times are a changing. Think AI, think AIM. Recently, Tracxn released its India Tech Annual Funding Report 2025, one of the most comprehensive data-led assessments of India's startup ecosystem. The headline number stands out. India raised $10.5 billion in tech funding in 2025, ranking as the third most funded startup ecosystem globally, ahead of China and Germany, and behind only the United States and the United Kingdom. But despite tighter capital, the ecosystem saw strong early stage momentum, rising IPOs, increasing acquisitions, and steady unicorn creation, which is wonderful, signaling not a slowdown, but a structural shift toward maturity and discipline. And of course, joining us today is Neha Singh, entrepreneur, angel investor, board member, and co founder of Tracxn, one of the world's leading market intelligence platforms, tracking over 5 million private companies globally. A big welcome to you, Neha, on Front Page. Great to have you with us.
Hi, thanks a lot for having me. Excited to be here.
It's truly a pleasure having somebody like you who has had such early experience and has had a wonderful journey. And let's dive right deep into it. India raised $10.5 billion in 2025, Neha, ranking third globally despite a funding decline, as you would have just heard me mentioning. But what does this ranking tell us about India's real position, Neha, in the global startup ecosystem today?
Yeah, so India ranked, the third largest in terms of the overall dollar funded. If you compare it to previous years, obviously there has been a little bit of slowdown, or I would
Mhm.
say probably sideways in terms of the overall dollar invested. But having said that, that is something that you also see across different regions as well. Overall, I think India continues to be a very exciting ecosystem for the whole startup activity.
Which is wonderful to hear, because that brings us to this thought that there is this aspect that total funding fell 17% year on year, but early stage funding grew 7%. So the point is this investors becoming cautious or probably smarter?
Yeah, so that's an interesting, sort of start if you actually go behind the numbers. If you see,
Mm-hmm.
overall funding is likely to be around 11 billion for the whole year 2025, and if you compare it to previous years, this is higher than the bottom, which was 2023,
Mm-hmm.
right? But it is, sort of a slight decline over last year, 2024, right? So it is, so it is not the bottom, I would say, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is probably behind us, but the recovery that we were expecting this year based on how the Q1 was progressing,
Mm-hmm.
that probably slowed down in Q2 onwards. And the overall funding stats, if you see, it's been a little sideways. But behind the scene, if you actually see a few things, like the early stages, overall funding has increased. Also,
Yep.
another thing is that though the deals volume has decreased, but the average ticket size has actually become nearly double of what it was last year. So it also means the fact that investors are probably putting in money or being more selective in the kind of companies that they are putting in money. But their average ticket size is nearly double of that.
Which is encouraging, to be honest. And seed funding dropped sharply in 2025. Should we worry about a future innovation gap, Neha, or is this a healthy filtering of weaker ideas?
Yeah. So overall, seed would have has fallen in terms of the overall one. But if you see, just the quality of founding team, that has increased
Mm-hmm.
thanks to the maturing ecosystem. So if you see now, a lot of companies are probably founded by second time founders or CXOs of successfully scaled companies, and then they are starting. So this is very different from what it was probably 10 years back. I
Sure.
think thanks to the maturing ecosystem, you now have very strong founding teams also starting up.
Which actually augurs very well for the road ahead, to be honest, Neha. Which brings me to this thought: enterprise applications, retail, and fintech remain the top funded sectors. What do these sectors signal about what investors believe will scale reliably in India, Neha?
Yeah, no, that's an interesting question. So if you see actually the top sectors which got most of the the funding, on the top, that remains retail. So India continues to be a very strong and growing consumer economy thanks to the
Mm-hmm.
rising per capita income, etc., which is there. So a rise of disposable incomes, across the different customer segments. So you saw multiple subsegments within retail, sort of increase in funding. So for instance, B2B e-commerce was one. So you had companies like Inframarket, Jumbo Tail, Zworks raised rounds. Another, very hot theme was D2C brands. A lot of the
Mm-hmm.
investors actually made investments in this sector. So you saw companies like a Jiva, Farmly, etc., raised round. And then, the third being quick commerce. There's a lot of
Sure.
talk, obviously, already there in the listed space, thanks to Blinkit and Swiggy. And now,
Yeah.
even in the private market space, you have people like Zepto, which might IPO next year. Even
Mm.
others verticals within quick commerce, right, like services like Snapbit, or verticals
Mm.
like Slick,
Mm.
raised rounds. So overall consumer was one big theme behind which people sort of invested. The second was fintech, which again continues to be one hot theme, and within that you saw lending being one of the themes,
Sure.
wherein companies raised rounds, or investment tech. So Grow raised a pre-IPO round. Then there were other
Right.
companies like Raise, Deserve, which raised round within the investment tech. Right. So this continued to be one, the key themes which is there. And having said that, obviously AI was one overarching theme
Yeah.
wherein investors
Yeah.
were constantly excited about seeing the deals, new deals come in. And there were some new emerging sectors as well that we saw. Like one interesting sector which probably rose is your defense tech, I would
Mm.
say. So companies in the
Yeah.
drone space, right, also sort of raised round. So I think overall consumer continues to be one big theme which investors are putting in money behind. AI is
Mm-hmm.
definitely something that everyone is looking at opportunities in, and then there were some emerging themes as well.
Wonderfully put. Thank you so much, Neha, for actually elaborating on all of that. Of course, we had mentioned Grow. Grow was definitely one of the darlings as far as the IPO was concerned. Which brings me to this: 2025 recorded 42 IPOs and 136 acquisitions, both up year on year. So, are exits becoming the new validation metric or replacing headline funding rounds?
Yeah. So that is definitely a key highlight of 2025, I would say. So in terms
Mm-hmm.
of the IPO, even on the main board, this was a record year in terms of the number of issues and the total dollar raised. But even in the VC and tech back space, this was the record year in terms of the number of VC and PE backed companies getting listed. So this was
Nice.
fairly a good year in that sense. There were
Mm-hmm.
over 40 tech IPOs. Within that, about 20 VC and tech funded companies got listed, including companies like Agro, Pine Labs, Physics Wala,
Mm.
Capillary, Aether, Urban Company, right? There were a lot of good companies getting listed. So I think this was a record year, in terms of
Yeah.
the exits. And I think it probably started with like Zomato getting listed a few years back, and then even for founders who were not thinking about IPO as the route,
Sure.
now that has become one of the key things, in terms of founders, like getting listed. So you saw a lot of narrative also of the founders about
True.
profitability and what the public market wants, and you also saw a lot of companies getting listed. So this was a record year. And on the other hand, also on the funds portfolio, you saw funds with multiple exits through IPOs, right?
Mm.
Like P15 had multiple IPOs, Elevation, right? Even SoftBank portfolio had exits through
Yeah.
IPO. So this was a record. This was also a good year for getting liquidity back into the ecosystem through the GPs, LPs, and hopefully that is going to be reinvested back in the ecosystem. So record year for IPOs, and hopefully there's also a good pipeline of companies which are going to hit the Wall Street next year, including
Right.
companies like Zepto, PhonePe, etc. Right, so you might see even a good, very good issues come in next year as well. And that's on the IPO side. I think that was probably the biggest highlight of the year.
Sure.
And even if you compare to the acquisition numbers, they were also up year on year. And even as the year began in Q1 itself, you saw like a large IPO like Minimalist
Mm.
getting acquired by HUL for more than $300 million, which was one of the
Mm.
sizable acquisitions that this ecosystem has seen. So that is
True.
another healthy trend that is there, that you're also seeing exits. You're also seeing sort of liquidity back through the funds and through the ecosystem, that hopefully is going to get reinvested back and accelerate things.
So all in all, a great year, a good year, which brings us to this, because I guess that definitely condones this the growth aspect that you talked about, the fact that there is a lot of liquidity, there were a lot of IPOs that took place. India added, as you were mentioning a little while back, we got it wrong, not 5 but 6 unicorns if you add up the non-tech as well in 2025. Am I right on that first, Neha? 6, right?
That's correct. That's correct.
Wonderful.
Yes.
All right. So this is so are we moving away from unicorn count obsession toward building fewer, stronger category leaders?
So that's definitely happening. I think the unicorn count, which at the peak was probably nearly 40. From
Yeah.
there it is down to single digit. But I would say there is good quality of companies which are able to raise rounds. I think right now what is also happening is that at the later stage, companies are also thinking about private capital versus getting listed. So if you
Hmm.
see, a lot of the companies are also able to raise money as they get listed. So that is also a good alternative for a lot of companies, that and also from the investors perspective, their late stage, the valuation benchmark for the later
Hmm.
stage rounds is probably getting closer in multiples to what it is there in the public markets,
Which is
right? So you
nice.
also saw that as an alternative. So for a lot of late stage round, instead of sort of raising a late stage round, a private round, people are also thinking about raising that in the public market, or
Hmm.
doing an IPO for that.
Which is wonderful. Which brings us to this point. Uh, Women co-founded startups raised $1 billion in 2025, Neha, but with, well, fewer deals. So does this point to a capital concentration problem or growing confidence in scaled women-led businesses? And who better to answer that question than you?
Yeah, I would say it's probably the latter. There's good quality of companies which is coming up. There's if the thankfully the number of female founders have increased, though it's still far from what it needs to be.
Sure.
But having said that, there's good amount of money. That is that. A lot of rounds which is there. I think the overall decrease is probably a function of the overall ecosystem. It
Mm-hmm.
has been hard for a lot of other companies also to raise round, and it's probably reflective of that. But having said that, now you see a lot more companies which are coming up wherein there are women founders, which is a very healthy trend.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Which is wonderful and encouraging to hear. And I really wish that that number keeps growing and very healthy. Bengaluru alone accounted for 32% of total funding, with Mumbai close behind. So the point is, Neha, is India's startup ecosystem still too metro centric, or Is this concentration inevitable at scale?
Yeah, so that is, I think that trend probably continues as
Hmm.
it has, there's a little bit of expansion which is happening, and I'll just come to that. But Bangalore continues to be a key hub, and
Yeah.
given the fact that there's so much activity in the AI space, etc., all the companies wanting to do that, there's a good pool of engineering talent which is available
Hmm.
here. So Bangalore continues to be the top hub. Mumbai is the second, second on the charts, because it's a good hub for financial services. So if you
Sure.
look at a lot of the fintech companies, right, they were sort of headquartered in Mumbai, like a Raise
Hmm.
or a Viva Services. That also raised round. So Mumbai continues to be the second largest, and fintech is one of the largest segments
Sure.
within that, right? And Delhi continues to be the third. On the I would say outside the top metros, one of the things which is probably happening is that there are also companies which are coming up in manufacturing, right,
Hmm.
which maybe in terms of brands, etc., wherein the companies are getting closer to where the manufacturing setup is. And
Sure.
typically these manufacturing sectors are outside the top metros. So there
True.
you also saw some companies come in. But having said that, the concentration probably still continues among the top ones.
Would you see this changing anytime soon? I mean, would you see this entire landscape changing at all, Neha?
Yes, definitely. So what typically we have seen is that whenever there's a large company created in any of the cities, then that gives rise to a lot more other companies in that
Sure.
sector. To give you an example, like Chennai used to be, like Zoho started in Chennai, and then there is
Hmm.
a whole
Hmm.
Zoho mafia. There are so
Hmm.
many good SaaS companies that have come out of that ecosystem. So as soon
Hmm.
as you have sort of one scale company coming up in any of the cities, that actually gives rise to a lot of other companies, thanks to the talent pool that they are able to build. And so I think that that should accelerate. So even as you have like a few companies in all the other cities, that should help encourage more companies to expand over there.
Which is nice. Which actually brings me to this thought. Late stage funding fell sharply while exits rose. So are investors now prioritizing capital recycling and discipline over, let's say, aggressive growth bets?
That's definitely there, and I've said there are two things for that. So one is that on the later stage, the people are looking for more sober valuations, I would say. So a lot of the companies are also opting for, I would say, the public markets, which is there. And the
Hmm.
second thing is that investors are also being very selective in terms of the newer bets that they are making. So because they also have to save money for investment in their portfolio. Like if you look at the global late stage investors, like SoftBank or Tiger Global, which used to be super active in the
Hmm.
peak of about 3-4 years back, they have been fairly less active, I would say, though
Hmm.
it's likely to be increase. But having said that, the funds are also saving some money for reinvestment or for later stage deployment in their own portfolios, I would say. So the newer bets that the funds are making are probably lesser than what they were doing maybe like 4 years back.
Which is a good thing. If we step back and we kind of look beyond the numbers, what is that single biggest structural shift, Neha, that you see in India's tech ecosystem in 2025, and what should founders and investors prepare for in 2026?
Right. So 2026, 2025, the key highlight was how adaptive the founders were. So if you see, the narrative actually changed from growth at all costs to sustainable growth and profitability,
Mm-hmm.
right, a year back. And you also saw a lot of the founders being able to pivot successfully and make their models, based on the new sort of mantra which is there. And thanks to that, you probably the highlight of this 2025 was the IPO, which was a record year for IPOs, and just
Yep.
getting the liquidity back into the ecosystem of GPs and LPs. Right. So that was probably the highlight of 2025, how
Mm-hmm.
adaptive the founders were, and, the record year for IPOs, it was there. And I think in 2026, likely to be it might be difficult to beat the numbers in the IPOs, but given the pipeline, a lot of people are probably expecting it might be comparable or higher. So I think 2026 also, should be a great year, for the overall ecosystem.
One final message you'd like to give to all the women founders, Neha?
So one message that I would like to give is that go for it. I think now is a great time to start. If you're on the fence thinking about it, now is a great time to do that, because I think structurally, I think India is a great place to do a startup.
Fabulous. And coming from you, Neha, trust you me, it means a lot to a lot of those people who are looking at their futures with starry eyes. The future looks good. 2025 was fabulous. Thank you so much for being on the show with us, Neha. Wishing you all the best and a very happy new year.
Thanks a lot for having me, and a very happy new year to all the viewers as well.
Pleasure. Well, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Neha, of course, was sounding extremely happy, encouraged, and the fact that it was a record year for IPOs in 2025. The overall ecosystem looks robust and healthy, and 2026 is, well, going to be surprisingly pleasant as far as the overall understanding goes. And of course, a special message to all of the women founders who are out there watching. This is the time to, well, get yourselves going because the future looks good. This was, of course, Front Page. Think AI, think investment, think AIM.